Sometimes a lens comes out and it's less about technical perfection and more about pure creativity. And that's exactly what the AstrHori 6mm f2.8 fisheye is all about. This is one of the widest and most unusual lenses you can put on your camera. But is it fun to use and actually worth buying? Let's find out. So the AstrHori 6mm f2.8 is a manual focus fisheye lens available for L mount, Sony E mount, Canon RF and Nikon Z mount cameras. Today I'm testing the Sony E mount version with a price of around $299. Now AstrHori have sent me this lens to review, but as always they have no say in the contents of the video. And if you enjoy lens and camera gear reviews like this, please subscribe to the channel as it really helps me out a lot. So let's have a closer look at the lens and what it comes with. It comes in a fairly standard box and there's nothing too unusual here. It has a warranty card and documentation, and really that's about it. Other than that, there's just the lens in the box. The lens comes with a slide-on metal lens cap, and straight away you can see that the lens looks quite unusual. It has that huge bulbous front element that gives you a clue that it's going to be a very different shooting experience from a standard lens. It has a quite hefty all-metal construction with a brush metal finish, which makes it look and feel very sturdy. Now, it does weigh around 340 grams, which is about 3/4 of a pound, so quite heavy considering it is quite a small lens. Behind the rear lens cap, there are no electronic connections. Remember, this is a manual focus lens, and it doesn't have any weather sealing either. It's a fully manual lens, so there is no autofocus here. Focusing and aperture are all controlled manually on the lens itself. The focus ring moves smoothly with no notches, but annoyingly it is quite easy to knock by accident where you can lose focus and you do have to be quite precise with the focus. There is also an aperture ring with notch selection from f2.8 to f16. This lens feels pretty solidly built with that metal construction and is quite compact. All photos and videos that you are seeing here have been shot with this lens. Now, usually I would film this video here that you're watching in the studio with this lens. But as you can imagine, and I will show you now, it doesn't really suit this type of shooting in particular. So as you can see, using the AstrHori 6mm fisheye lens does look quite a lot different in the studio setting and probably isn't that suitable. Previously, I was using the Sigma 15mm for comparison, and with this 6mm lens, I've had to bring the camera way closer to me so that you can even really see me in the shot at all. In fact, the lens is probably 15 centimeters away from my face, and I also have to keep my head quite still to stay in focus with manual focus. So yes, not really the lens for this situation, but you can see what it's like. There may be some creative reasons where this kind of angle would work in a studio, but yeah, it's not going to be one I move to using day to day. So do be careful that you can't use this lens for all different types of shooting. If there are any other particular lenses that you would like me to cover on this channel, let me know in the comments below. I'm always interested in seeing what lenses you guys want to see. So this lens has a massive field of view, 220 degrees in fact, meaning you really capture pretty much everything in front of the lens, and in fact to the sides of the lens as well, where you get that obviously distorted fisheye look. Composition does take some getting used to with this lens, as it's very easy to get your feet or your fingers or just parts of the shot you're not used to taking in front of the camera. So it needs a bit of practice. So let's talk about the image quality of this lens. It's decently sharp, wide open at f2.8, which is a nice surprise, as I was expecting something a little bit less sharp considering the fisheye nature of this lens. Now, things are much more distorted at the edges, where you do also get a lot of purple fringing at the edges of details. Things do sharpen up at f4, but you still get plenty of that purple fringing, so not perfect at the edges. But with a lens like this, sharpness and technical perfection aren't honestly the main point. This lens is all about the style, distortion, and creating shots you can't simply get with another lens. You do always get the black porthole effect that you can see on all the examples here, unless you zoom a long way in post-production, but then you lose a lot of what makes this lens interesting. The circular fisheye lens bends straight lines and creates globe-like perspective. I haven't quite been able to get a full photo globe, but you can get pretty close to it. It makes things look very stylized, but as you can imagine, only for certain types of shooting. You're not going to be using this for portraits or landscapes unless you want that specific effect. It happens to have a fantastic minimum focus distance of just 8 centimeters, making for really interesting effects, letting you get incredibly close to your subject while still capturing a huge amount of the environment. This makes this type of lens fantastic for more creative kind of shooting, music videos, maybe skateboarding videos, experimental film making, and social media content where you want your footage to stand out immediately. Just be aware, of course, there is no autofocus or image stabilization, so video can look shaky very quickly if you are not careful. Because this lens is so wide, it's also surprisingly fun for photospheres, ultra-wide-angle landscape, architecture, and even handheld walking shots where you want exaggerated sense of movement. Of course, remember, there is no stabilization. The f2.8 aperture also helps in low light situations, and because everything is so wide, getting subjects in focus manually is actually easier than you expect, though it does move quite easily on that focus ring, so be careful there. Of course, this isn't a everyday lens, so if you're looking for accurate, straight lines, natural portraits, or technically clean images, this obviously isn't the lens. But if you want something creative that completely changes how you shoot, it becomes incredibly fun very quickly. So should you buy this lens? Well, for nearly $300, it is of course a lot of money for a bit of a gimmick. But if you do need a fisheye lens, it does it to a standard you'll definitely be happy with. It's great for experimental photography, music videos, and creative film making, as I mentioned before. So if you do want a lens that gives you something completely different with a different perspective, the AstrHori 6mm f2.8 fisheye is a great option to make your shots stand out.